Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar series, which is focusing on individuals' career success and how they could actually become more employable. And as part of the webinar series, today we are going to be talking about the road to career success. We're going to have a conversation with Mr. Ian Ailing, who is a co-founder and CMO of Compaira. Before I start share the dais with him, there are some basic housekeeping rules. If you've got any questions, please feel free to post it on the chat window, or we'll take the questions at the end of the presentation. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Ian, and I'd like to start by getting Ian to introduce himself, and we can start from there. And let me introduce, before I invite Ian, let me talk about myself. I'm actually the founder of Compaira. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I have actually got a PhD in understanding how people value people. That's my area of specialty. And I've worked in various sectors, got a few gray hairs, which means I've acquired experience quite a bit in various sectors. So I'd like to invite Ian to give a overview of what he is, who he is, what he has done so far before we actually get into the content of the presentation. Ian?
Sure, thank you, Ram. Thank you, and welcome everybody. I've had a very diverse career. I've sort of spent much of my time working in the UK, but also a number of years working in France. For the last 20 plus years, I've been a board director of different organisations. Some of those working with big organisations like Tesco, some of them working with startups, some of them working with charities, family companies, PLCs, a whole range of different environments to work and lead in, and also different sectors. So FMCG sector, thinking about product development, data science, and the consultancy sector, but also retail, and making big retail work from both a marketing point of view and a transformation point of view. But if I look back and try and sum it all up, then I'm proud to have supported over £2 billion worth of growth during that period of time. So I've seen a lot of change and a lot of experience, and I hope today I can bring some of that to the conversation about looking back, what lessons can we learn from that path?
Brilliant. Thanks, Ian. Thanks. Before we actually get into the actual nitty-gritties of the conversation, I want you to actually talk about what do you mean by the road to career success?
It's a good question, and undoubtedly, there's often said this is a journey, not a destination. Yeah, we all live our lives, and each day matters. But it's I think we have to ask the question: what do we want? Some people want money, some people want privilege, some people want respect, some people want family. There's a whole different set of motivations that matter to us, and it's not up to you or I to judge that. But I think each of us needs to be honest with ourselves about what we really want. And then if you want that, then find a path to it. And I suppose today we're sort of looking at some of the tools to explore that and work out on which road does each person on this call or each person listening to this webinar want to be on.
Okay. I mean, I am familiar with the framework which Simon Sinek always uses. Ask the why, the how and the what would follow. So are you suggesting that people need to start looking at understanding the purpose of what they want to do from a why perspective? Why am I looking at a career, and why is it going to be suitable for me, before understanding or before coming to a conclusion of how I am going to approach this and what I need to do? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think if life was neat, you would do just that. But life isn't neat, it's messy. And I think, but keep asking ourselves the questions along the way. Why am I doing this? How am I doing this? What am I doing? Is a very useful check along the path. Okay. We're not all given a map at the start to tell us where we'll end. but
Absolutely.
along the way, we can look backwards at our map and find out what we learn for going forwards. And I think that the Simon Sinek structure is excellent. It's a really powerfully simple idea, and I'd really advocate for it as well.
Okay. Okay. Now, if you're going to be talking about, you know, uh, the career success path, the first thing that you said is understand what you're good at. Can you expand on that, please?
Sure, and it's funny coming just this morning. I was thinking of the words of Sun Tzu, who wrote an amazing book called The Art of War some thousands of years ago, and was advising on how to basically win in conflict. So I'm not suggesting we buy guns and stuff, but I think that actually the advice he was giving, one of the pieces of advice was that if you can understand yourself but not your enemy, you'll win half your battles. So if you can understand your enemy but not yourself, you win half your battles. So if you can understand yourself and your enemy, you can win all your battles. And quite often in a career development, in a job development, in a thinking about we keep thinking about the other thing. And I'd really recommend start with yourself. And if you really want to found who you are and what you're good at, it's probably going to build out of your values. What do you think good is? And that's again not always easy. So, but that why question, that sort of 3-year-old toddler question about yourself, is really important. And I think the thing that I've noticed along the way that's been really useful is taking key moments and then learning from them. Some of those will be successes, and they're the ones that go on your CV and go, oh, look what I did, it was really good. The ones that don't tend to go on your CV are the ones that make you grow even stronger. The manager that you just didn't get on with, but you survived. You know, the business presentation that didn't go as well as you wanted it to. The job interview that you failed at. You know, those are all sorts of things that are really important to learn from. And I think out of that, you start to work out what it is that you don't like and what it is that you do like. So my first job was selling scales to greengrocers and butchers. You know, like it was a really knocking on someone's door, trying to persuade someone who sold things for a few pence to spend thousands of pounds. Horrible job. Yeah, really didn't like it. And out of it, I did it, and I got paid, and I managed to get another job from it. What I learned is I just didn't want a job whereby when I sold something to somebody, that was the end of the job. I wanted a relationship. I wanted it to go on. So it helped me get into FMCG. It helped me actually go back to college. I went back and studied and learnt more about marketing in this case to move on. But it was important that it wasn't what I wanted, but I learnt from it and I moved on. So I think that yeah, and maybe the extra tip in that is write things down, because sometimes when you're in the heat of the action and it happens, you have to survive. Afterwards, make a few notes, and then a few days later, come back to them. And it's really interesting the wisdom that you have in yourself, and you so quickly forget. And it's those things that, in my process, I've learned get to my values and have helped me really understand myself. And that's an essential part as you go into any of these paths. Is we're all good at something. What is it that you're good at?
You keep talking about going back to your values quite a bit. Uh, for the benefit of the audience, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the logic of values is that they lead to your attitudes, and your attitudes lead to your behaviors when you come into certain situations. And the thing we can see in each other is how we are, not why we are. So it isn't that we're all instantly aware of our values, but values are those independent decision makers that when we get into a situation, we turn right or left, we do this or that. They're the things that are coded into us, developed out of our childhood, developed out of our experiences. And I think that if you want to really be in control of your career, then being in control of yourself is a really good place to start. And so I'm really interested in how we learn about that. But I think, Ram, you know a lot about working on values. You know, you've been doing a lot of values diagnosis over time. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I just wanted to get your perspective on this. I mean, values are what I would say are absolutes, as you rightly said. You cannot have them in shades of gray. You're either honest or dishonest. You either have integrity or you don't have integrity. You're either fearful or fearless. But yeah, there is, but it's the core of all of this defines you as a human being. But then that then leads you to look at various things that you could excel and where you might need some help. And for all the participants who are there who are not registered on our platform, what I would suggest is just go and register and complete a profile where you will get a report which talks about the four core drivers that influence how you could take action. Now, by what I'm hearing from you is understand yourself, introspect, make a list, and then start from there.
Yes,
Then the next thing you say is, who needs your skills? What do you mean
absolutely.
by that?
Well, if we're going to get paid, somebody's got to pay us, haven't we? So sort of, so that in the marketplace for who needs me, I think there are some just really sensible things to do. And one of the things is when you go and Google it, so I'm Googling an opportunity. There are a lot of different organisations out there offering job opportunities. There are all sorts of recruitment consultants offering things. One of the things that I think we rarely do is stop and look at some of the drop down menus that people give us.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'd really encourage people to do is look at the sectors that, if you go on a site and it asks you to register, it says, which sector are you from? And quite often, whatever reason, job development, career development ends up being sector specific. And I'm not a fan of that. But the different sectors provide different experiences. So if you want to be working for a private company or a state company, if you want to be working for an entrepreneurial company or a big company, if you want to be working for um, a technology sector or a healthcare sector, all of those things are going to have character to them. So I'd really start there and just ask the question, have I ever thought about all these sectors? If I was to rank all these sectors, where would I put myself? Which ones of them come my top sectors? Am I doing that because I'm familiar? Am I doing that because some of my friends or my parents work there? And just be curious about the sectors and what they've got to offer, and then start to think about why you're ranking them highly. And again, that will come into why you think you're competitive in those areas. But the other thing you can then do is look at key individuals. So say you're going to look at the technology sector, yeah, and you can start to think about what sort of companies are in there, and you can look and start to look at searches around technology entrepreneurs, fast-growing technology companies, and you can see key individuals. And can you get to network in any of those groups? Can you get to events where there are people in those groups? Can you go and ask questions about what is it like to work here? What is it that drives you? Can you read articles about those people? So then get and see, are they sort of talking about the same things I'm interested in? And ultimately test yourself. So there's a job opportunity, write the application. Be honest with yourself. Is this application going to succeed? You don't always have to put an application in, but by testing it, you can start to think about whether your skills are really competitive. But again, it starts from, is this right for me? Because there's a world of work out there, and there is just the right opportunity for everybody. So how do we find that match between what I can do, what they need, and the environment I'm in? And so I think I'd really encourage that curiosity to keep asking
Okay.
the question, where's the best place for me?
Okay. I mean, when I talk of skills, when I see skills, I can see functional skills, which like your team building, your people skills, your leadership skills, and so on and so forth. And then you have technical skills, which basically depend on the nature of the job that you do. Say, for example, if you're in sales, using a familiarity with a CRM package like Salesforce, or if you're in marketing, using packages like Canva or various tools come into play. So uh, what what you're saying is start looking at creating the skill set from a functional and a technical skill perspective, and then start realistically assessing if this is what people need and map it against what they are saying. And you're also saying look at various sectors and see if you can actually transcend beyond certain sectors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's it. It's It's about probability. Where am I going to have the chance to be most successful? Not because it's just about what they want. It's about the match between what they want and who I am and how I can make the two. In order to learn about each other, you have to be able to describe yourself. And therefore technical skills are really tangible. You can see I'm capable of this. But quite often employment is not just about technical skills. It's about fit. It's about cohesion. It's about the ability to work and complement and grow as an individual. And so those functional skills, I think, start to tell you whether you are able to plan, whether you're creative, whether you have all those different dynamics to you. Again, there's some people are more something, some people are more another thing, and that's the bit where different industries, different companies will have natural requirements for different levels of those skills.
Okay. Okay. So having understood who you are, and understanding what skills are required, then the third advice you're talking about is finding out about the organization.
Yeah, I think if you start to narrow down to a sector, so say I'm looking at housing or healthcare, and I'm interested in those things, there are some key players. You can get a market report, you can start to understand who's the rising stars, who's big players in there. So I think you can get a sense of that. But say you narrow down to a company, so I'm going to look at this particular organization. Then how do you explore that company before you get to think about it being the right place to apply? Because applying is an effortful thing. It takes, there's an opportunity cost to apply. So I think inevitably looking at the statements around purpose and values is a really important thing. We've talked about that before. Does that chime with me? There are a lot of people who express good sentiments, so maybe that won't be enough, but you can at least start there. That's what people said they were trying to do. I think there's a really interesting thing that most companies have to publish their accounts, and get good at reading accounts, because accounts tell you so many different things. They tell you about whether the company is growing fast or not, whether it's a rich company or not, how risky it is or not, whether certain elements of the company are working or not. There's a lot that's sitting there in the public domain, and also if you then get to have that conversation with the company, you are speaking completely different language to many other people who will be going and having that conversation. So I think finances are public information, but also news. What is it that the company is talking about? What is it that they are proud of? Just listen to that and think how that chimes with their values and their purpose. And then key people. Go and do the LinkedIn search on the key people. And also things like Glassdoor, just look, so thinking about the sort of the feedback, employee feedback. Often, like on most ratings things, it will be polarized feedback. But what is it that went right? What is it that went wrong? You're filling in this total picture of an organization, which is either going to encourage you, yeah, this is great, or it's going to discourage you. Maybe I should place my energy elsewhere.
I mean, yeah, I do agree that looking at the company reports is a great starting point. But these days, you have a wealth of information about companies on social media channels, because they're all trying to present the best, image that they can, because of the employer branding, and everyone wants to attract people because there's a war for talent, anyways. So social media channels where company pages are there could be a good starting point too, because given that this generation of the workforce uses social media big time, I think that's a great starting point. However, Glassdoor, and what I felt was people give feedback if they're extremely happy or if they're extremely unhappy. There's no one who is there in the middle. So I would probably suggest taking the feedback of Glassdoor with a pinch of salt.
Mm,
And what I have actually seen is there are certain companies that take even the Glassdoor reviews seriously. But there
yeah,
are not a lot of many companies that do that. They actually go and respond and say, this is the reason why we do it. In fact, a lot of companies do that with TripAdvisor, which is where the customers give feedback. Funnily enough, they don't think about the employees as their internal customers, which is, I
yeah,
think, that will change hopefully in the near future.
yeah,
So understanding if the company's values sync with your values, is a core thing. And without that value congruence, I think it is going to create a lot of issues. All right. So, having got to that, what do you mean by this? Be the person on the job.
Well, I think this is the really tricky thing when it comes to um, the process that we have right now of getting people into work, which is application, interview. So I'm at this stage where I'm now meeting somebody who's an employer who's got a job, and they're meeting me to potentially be that job. Yeah. You inevitably don't know as much about the company as they do. But if you've done that research behind, you can speak with authority about where the company is. You can have confidence in that. But the person looking at you is trying to say, can you do this job? And so I think the top advice is get yourself into a mindset before you have that conversation where you're not just curious about the job. You are the job. You are doing the job. You can explain how you're going to do the job. You literally are walking into work that day as the person in that job. And the clever thing is to sort of have that confidence in the interview room to say, not arrogance, confidence that says that, yeah, I get that this is what you're trying to do, and this is how I'm explaining how I'm going to do it. But also to not leave yourself outside the door, to not be like a charade of yourself. You know, is how do you walk in honestly as you, but showing how you do the job? Because that interview is doing two things. One is it's showing the person who is interviewing you, you are capable. But it's also showing you could be happy here. And rarely do we think of interviews in a two-way thing, because the power sits with the person with the job, the person with the money. But actually, interviews are a two-way process. So if you enjoyed the process of conversation, if you enjoyed the chance to ask questions, if you enjoyed the way that you were able to share information, it's a really important part, of that. And of course, if you've done that, I suspect you are the person that gets offered the job as well. So I think it's really asking yourself the question of not being nervous. We're all nervous. We all have nerves. Not focusing on the things you can't do and how you're going to have that clever answer. Be the person in the job and answer how you are going to do the job. Take all your talent into that room and be that person. Be that mindset. That's what I mean by this. Yeah.
Okay. So we have spoken about the various things that people need to be doing by understanding the self and who needs the skills, about the organization's ability to align with my values and so on and so forth, and being the person to be the one who can actually deliver on the job. So all this comes from a pure the first job or the first role of getting into the organization. Given that the road to career success, we are talking about mapping your best path. Beyond that, assuming that if you've got some headway and you've done all this correctly and you've got into the organization, how can the person then use this insight to map the career success going forward?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I have always held an approach of what is my next possible move. I've not been obsessed about it. I just hold it there in a way, and it helps know the distance. At one point, I had three potential career paths, and I think we've talked about that chance to explore each of those things. So I think it's inevitably people who are able to progress on their path do so because they've performed. So I think it's really important. So job number one is to perform in the job you're in. That's job number one. However hard that is job number one. And then job number two is to imagine these possibilities and spend some of your time, ration some of your time into exploring them and looking for that moment when you can see the job, see the person, see the opportunity to have that conversation. The bit in between it are some of your learning and development opportunities. Maybe you go on a course, maybe you learn about something, maybe you read a book, maybe you read an article, maybe you subscribe to a LinkedIn group. All those are steps on the way between it. And so I think you can write that down. That's one way to do it, and then it can keep yourself honest. One of the things I do is, I have a sort of a cycle of review, in the way I write things down and review them. And I just make sure that I'm giving enough time to myself each week to think about, am I creating those opportunities? So you allow yourself to pace things. Sometimes you'll be too busy, you just can't quite do it. Sometimes you have more time, so you do it. So it's being accountable to yourself for your career path, and then giving yourself recognition and credit, which is where at the moment we use CVs, but obviously one of the things we're exploring Compaira is how we use our profile, where you just add that extra thing I've learned. I've now got more skills. I've now got this experience. And you keep adding that to your story so that you can tell people, so they can understand who you are and they can understand what is possible for them.
Interesting. So what you're saying is the steps that you have actually identified for finding your first job can also be applied internally when you start looking at your next promotion or next move, and the same steps need to be followed, right? I mean, that's what you're saying, which kind of then moves into the area of self development and learning and all that bits. So you talk about personal branding. I mean, what does that is that a culmination of all this and building a you, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, definitely. I had a really interesting moment later on in my career where I realized that I kept turning up as an own brand version of myself. So I'd turn up and say, oh, I worked at the co-op, or I worked for Wilco. And I realized I was trying to actually sell myself as that company, not as me. And so I stepped back from that and then asked the question, well, who am I then? What is that about? Which led to the deeper version of the values and understanding that I've got now. And one of the first things I did was go back to my LinkedIn profile and ask the question, well, okay, how do I want to turn up then? Do I want to just accept that they've got a standard banner on the top? No. Do I like the color blue? Like sort of, what is it? And I just thought about how I might express myself. What is it that I wear? How do I present myself? How do I talk? How do I turn up? And so I think if we think about brands in the world that we enjoy, we know brand management is a particular skill. It's a series of consistent tone, personality, benefits, attributes. All of us are our own brand. You're the Ram Ragavan brand. I'm the Ian Ayling brand. And I think if we take that view and apply the skills to it, how would we turn up? How would we show ourselves? What does our social media presence look like? Is that the best of us? So yeah, I'd really encourage you. I welcome anybody having a look at my LinkedIn profile. You can see what I've done in my version of it. But it's just have to think about how people will discover you, because if they keep discovering this consistent person and this valuable person that you really are, then that's the way that leads to trust, and trust leads to opportunity.
Brilliant, brilliant. I mean, when I listen to what you had to say, and I mean, you talk about what you analyzing what you're good at. Then you said what the world needs. You need to identify that, and then you said you can also look at what the world is happy to pay for, which basically talks about the profession that you need to decides the profession that you need to be in, the vocation that you need to actually follow. Now, what about what you love? That's something that has to be part of all this, right? So when I blend all this, I am actually reminded of a concept called ikigai. In fact, that's a Japanese concept where they talk about doing this level of introspection to understand who you are, what you can offer, what you can get paid for, what the world wants, and what do you love. So when you answer these four questions by taking the steps that you have highlighted, you suddenly find your ikigai, which is a brilliant thing. And is there any template or framework or any resource that you would be happy to share with people, Ian, that they could actually, to the listeners of this webinar, that they could actually use it to kickstart this journey?
I think we're on The reason that you and I started the work we're doing today is to make sure that that's possible. You know, that fundamentally Compaira is the organisation that we've founded in order to try and make this, because it wasn't easily available. Yeah, and why not benefit? You know, I think I'm really interested in how each person in the world can be the best of themselves and benefit. And so, from a Comparer point of view, what we've started to do is gather resources. So there's some great resources that you can come and have a look at on the website. But I think the really great news is if you register a profile and start to learn about your values and about who you are through some of the really cutting edge stuff that you know your own PhD has helped us achieve, Ram, then that starts the journey. Yeah, but I think we know that that wasn't enough. I think we're really interested in disrupting the process of how employment works because it's a clumsy process. As an employer, I have sifted through thousands of CVs in my time. I know that unconscious bias exists. I know that expedient decisions get taken. I know that we can do better. And what we're going to do is change that. What we're going to do is make sure that people can be found. You know, we can shortlist people, we can put people to the top who are the most talented, most right, in a rounded way, not just that you've got the skills, but you've got the skills and the values to make this work. That is what we're doing here. So I'd really welcome people on the call, people listening, to come and explore with us. You know, we're a young company, so we've got a lot to get right, but we've got some great assets to have a look at.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Anyways, I am mindful of the time. We just started 2 minutes late, so just happy to round it up. So thanks a lot for your time and for sharing your insight, Ian. I'd like to now throw the floor open to any questions if people have, and Ian can answer or I can answer that. Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions? Sorry, we can't hear you. I mean, it is Alvin. We can't hear you. So. No, I can't hear you, Alvin. Sorry.
Sorry, this is Madhushri. Hi, Ram. Hi, Ian. It was a
Hi.
very insightful, walkthrough of what we need to work on, like in the current market. But just giving the consideration of the current economic condition, the inflation and there's a lot of ramp downs in projects. There's hiring freeze and all those. So how do you think? I mean, we will align into these parameters that you talked, the mapping, right? But how do you take in consideration of the economic condition? How best can we do, like being an employee?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, and what a very difficult period of time we're in, aren't we? I get it, and we've been here before as well. You know that the world runs in cycles, so I think all I can really encourage is momentum. If you're in work, then make the most of the work you're in. If you can develop opportunities within your work or near your work, it's probably people will take slightly less risks at the moment, so let's be fair. If you're not in work and you're seeking work, then try and find ways to take volunteering opportunities or take development opportunities and keep showing that you're using your time to get momentum. So don't get stuck is the only encouragement I can have when the market gets slower. But behind it, there's still more people in work than not in work, and there's more economy than not economy. So there's still a market. So I think please have confidence in yourself that you can do things.
See, the other thing I would also add to it is go and network with other people. We are so caught up in what we do for our team, for our manager. We seldom try to reach out to, have conversations with other teams and other managers. Maybe there you might find your new project or new role that is coming out there. Because I know a friend of mine, he was working for a big investment bank, or is rather still. He thought he was because he was about to lose his job, but then he's a prolific networker. And what he did was when he had that fear, he started speaking to his peers from other departments and to speaking to their managers, and he secured a position in a different project, and he's now happily settled there. So that is something that people tend to forget. If things are bad for everyone. So as Ian said, if you're good at what you're doing, make yourself indispensable. What can you do to ensure that, yes, the companies would sometimes take uh, you know a rational or an irrational view of who they want and who they don't want. So what can you learn from this is the question that I would go back and say, how can you then use it to get your next job? So probably volunteering is a way to then use the next, it's to bridge the gap between your current and the new job, or from no job to the new job. So that's one way of doing it. And it's about being patient, because it's a bad, if it's not working for you, it's not working for a lot of people. So be patient, hang in there. When I started my first business, uh, a, this was in 2008. Uh, Prior to that, I was at work and I had experience. So I thought, I've got it all, I've sussed everything. I'm ready to launch something on my own. So I took that big plunge, quit my, job and all that stuff, and I started it in 2008. The very same day, Lehman Brothers crashed. I never anticipated any of that. There was no writing on the wall, which is very obvious. And it was, I mean, the world went into a meltdown. I mean, everyone knows if what scenario and what chaos it caused. But I never lost heart. I kept my focus, relentless focus. So I started using LinkedIn to network with people, to start talking to people, and then showing some of the things that you can do. Volunteered to do something for free for them to experience it. And whilst we were literally crashing and burning in the UK, the first year, without any personal network, only through LinkedIn and networking, I managed to do work with companies like the American Society for Clinical Oncology in the US, with some big names here like Lloyd's Bank, with some supermarket chains like Tesco's and Jonglo's, etc. So it's not that people are not spending money, as Ian said, they are a bit more cautious. So if you give them enough reasons to invest in your capabilities, then it makes it easier. So if you need to understand, so goes back to one of the things which Ian was saying. Look at what the market wants. Do you have that skill? If you don't have that skill, can you upskill yourself by doing something, taking a course, or volunteering with someone, or doing something, and then approaching them? So then the reasons, and then if you walk in as though you own the job, the chances of you not getting it is going to be less and less. Hopefully that answers your question, Madhushri.
Yeah, that's definitely a very thoughtful and like insight, like how to handle this situation. So thanks, Ram, and thanks again. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Alvin here. Sorry, there was going to be some noise in the background, so I
Yeah.
didn't really want to say much. Just want to say thank you, Ian. Looking at your profile, I did look at your profile whilst we were talking on LinkedIn, and I could see quite a few similarities. One of the things was that there are some areas that you branched into that I'd like to branch into myself. So I'd say myself, I'm at the middle stage, not obviously at the end of the stage. So
Mm.
um, you mentioned something about creating a profile on Comparia.
Comparing.
So Comparia, yeah, sorry. So once you do that, what's the next step? What happens to once you've created a profile? How does it work?
Yeah, sure. Ram, do you want to take this one? This is a
See, I mean, what happens is basically your profile, you start building it it's like your passport or your savings account, let's say. If you, I mean, so you say you're in the middle of your career, so I am safely assuming that you're not probably aware of passbooks or bank accounts where it was printed and where you actually entered the monthly savings rather than a statement. This Comparer tries to capture all the experience that you have, and then it looks at the whole you rather than what you can do individually in a role. And then we work with companies. So your profile gets compared to any requirements that a company asks for, and then your profile gets matched depending on the requirements. And when we say it gets matched, we don't reveal the identity of who is applied for the role. You don't have to apply. I mean, you just click apply and the system matches your profile automatically. And when you get shortlisted, you'll be asked to, you'll be not only be compared based on your experience. When you log into Compaira, you'll be asked to complete a behavior questionnaire and a competence questionnaire. And we're going to be launching a values questionnaire soon. So your values and your behaviors and your competence will be compared against the benchmark behaviors that the companies expect, the benchmark competence that the companies expect, and the values the companies have. So it starts matching you in a much more holistic way, and then starts presenting you with options, when as and when the opportunity arises. Now we are also building something which is still haven't launched, but the intention is to launch it in a couple of months. It's where you start looking at what can you do to improve your skill sets. So which is basically what Ian was talking about. We are calling at the moment we're calling it as the job gym, like how you go to the gym and exercise your muscles, specific muscles to gain some specific strength in specific areas. The job gym allows you to say, look at what you are good at, what you need to explore if you want to get to the next level of whatever that you're exploring, whatever role that you want. It gives you a kind of an action plan, or points you to certain resources which you can then use that to kickstart your journey. So that's what the platform does.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think the other thing, the other question, that's really good. Thank you for that. I will definitely set up my profile. I'm convinced, let's say that. The second thing was that about, it's funny enough, you mentioned something about a personal brand, developing your personal brand. And that was the reason why I looked at your profile, Ian, is that I'm actually supposed to, well, I'm working at the moment, but I'm doing an article around looking at your discovering your strengths and personal branding, and also how you deal with difficult situation, difficult conversations, which I think I wanted to present to my company to say, oh, you know what, this might be able to help some other employees within the company. But so I just want to know if that's something that you do also help in terms of providing some resources within the platform.
Yeah.
Uh, yes, and what we would probably do is at some point in the future, we would probably be having a webinar, hosting a webinar on how to build your personal brand. So that in that session, probably we can explore this in greater depth and detail.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Now
Okay.
I'll happily connect on that LinkedIn bit, or I'm simply at ian@compaira.com. So if you want to drop me a note, then please do as well.
I'll do that too. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. And what we have done is basically recorded. So we will be sharing it, and it's available on the YouTube channels. It'll be there on our website and other social media platforms. Ameru, who's organized all this and managed to get people on, he's the one who's our marketing guru. And thanks a lot, Ameru, for your help. And the next webinar that we're looking at is basically how do you create your online presence that catches the eyes of the employers. So stay tuned. And till then, keep on the journey, keep looking within, and hopefully you'll discover more than what you think you are. Thank you. Thanks for your time.